Welcome to our humble podcast, Next Generation Carriers, which is not to be confused with aircraft carriers, because every time I Google it, that's what I keep getting. So,
letter carriers say they've been working for more than 500 days without a contract, and today they made their voices heard on the streets of
USPS failed to protect Eugene Gates and others.
Can't take it no more.
Mail carrier robbed at gunpoint.
Police are targeting these mail carriers for their universal keys.
Nearly 1,200 reported attacks and other assaults on postal workers just last year alone.
Next Generation Carriers and guests are individual union members speaking in a personal capacity and do not represent the views of the NALC, the United States Postal Service, or any other entity that is spoken on this program.
just want to make a quick correction from last week. So last week, I used the term when we were talking to Mike Cariff about the situation with the comments made on the Fed Up podcast. I said they were saying ride or die. I incorrectly used the word they. I should have said Corey was using the term ride or die to talk about Mike's involvement with the CLC. So I did not meant to imply the host. I did talk to Ron about it. We ended it pretty well. I have no animosity towards him, and I'm a big fan of his show. So going forward, Chris will choose his words a bit more carefully. Thank you. My name is Chris Bersampieri. I am a 9-year letter carrier, and I'm in Branch 18, Southeastern Massachusetts.
James Capone, 18-year letter carrier. I am branch president of Branch 764 out of Dedham, Massachusetts.
My name is John Murphy. I'm a city letter carrier out of Naples, Florida, Branch 4716. And we are joined today by Paul. I'll let him introduce himself. Please let us know what branch you are and
how to pronounce your last name.
Okay, you guys will be the first ones to say it right. So I'm Paul Boulanger. I'm the president of Branch 44. I didn't get how many years you've been in, John, but I might have as much as all of you combined. I'm on year 39. So I've been carrying the statue for a while. I worn a lot of shirts for the union. I'm currently branch president, and I'm also an arbitration advocate, which I love. I'm on a roll right now. I get 13 wins in a row. So fingers crossed, yeah, keep it going. But I'm happy to be here, guys. Thanks for the invite.
There's 3 headlines. 1, unionized Costco employees have authorized a strike set to begin on February 1st unless they reach a deal before their contract expires at the end of this month. The Teamsters said about 18,000 Costco workers are ready to walk off the job at 56 of the company's warehouse stores across 5 states. Workers are demanding better wages, paid family leave, sick time, and protections against surveillance. Also in the news, SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, is joining the AFL-CIO, adding roughly 2 million members to the 13 million strong group, which includes workers across more than 50 other states. The move reunites the 2 powerful labor groups after they parted ways nearly 2 decades ago, and as the incoming Trump administration is expected to launch newer attacks on workers' rights. And lastly, in labor news, the meat packing companies Purdue Farms and JBS will pay $8 million for exploiting immigrant children who worked in their slaughterhouses after reaching a settlement with the Department of Labor. The companies came under scrutiny in recent years after a series of reports revealed unaccompanied youth, mostly from Mexico and Central America, were being maimed and burned while working at meat plants, often on the graveyard shift. Federal law prohibits children from working in slaughterhouses due to dangerous conditions. The money will go to the children as well as organizations that assist them, including kids in need of defense.
Okay, I've been asked to provide my funniest story as a steward. Okay, and this is not a grievance that I represented; it's one that I actually stepped in on. So we were at a state convention, and I got a call from a steward in a different office. I'm not going to say what office because it's going to come into play. If I say something,
this is awesome. Good. You have to be anonymous. Shit.
Yeah, they got to be anonymous. And the steward said, "Listen, I'm a brand new steward. I can't get a hold of anybody but you. I was the bottom of the barrel. Paul, can you help me?" I said, "Okay, what do we got?" He said, management told me they're taking a carrier off the street right now and putting them on emergency placement. Apparently, this carrier has had an ongoing conflict with the customer for the last 2 years, and they did something. They retaliated against the customer. They're pulling him off the street. I said, okay, well, what are they accused of having done? He says, well, apparently, allegedly, this carrier walked up the 3 stone steps to the mailbox, got to the top step, dropped their pants, and defecated. So hold on, Chris. Okay. So now I come on and I'm like, okay. I said, first of all, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is an allegation. These people are an ongoing conflict. They probably threw dog crap on the step. I said, so the first thing you got to do is you got to interview the carrier, and I can still hear the steward taking a deep breath. He goes, Paul, they showed me the video. Oh. Management had it on video. He said, I saw everything. Like, oh, Jesus. So at that point, I mean, the story ended okay with a medical emergency, and the carrier, got through it. but that's the funniest thing I've had to deal with in my years as a steward. It was just an assist, and I didn't have much good advice. I kind of held my hair and held my nose and tried not to laugh.
Well, that's a shitty story.
It is, and I'm grateful. He says, you don't want to see the video. I said, you're right, I don't.
No, God, no. I had the only thing when I was a steward when I was in SEIU, and there was a guy, one of my guys representing, and there was a folder on the table, and I go, what's going on here? He goes, well, someone told me the story that he sent a nude photo of himself on the company phone in the company bathroom on company time. And I'm like, okay. Ooh. So I go up to him, and he walks in, and he sits down, and he goes, what's in there? I go, you sent a photo. And he goes, I will quit immediately if I can just take this folder with me and take the picture with me. And I go, are you sure? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, because it was unsolicited nude photo. And he had a lot of problems too. Let's just say, but yeah. So I'm glad I didn't have to see that picture either. That I had a flashback of like, I don't want to be a part of the photo, but that's fine. And management goes, what happened? I go, that's fine. So, all right. I'm glad we shared the horror stories of our job.
So to go along with the poop story, this one is not
we got poop stories.
This isn't a grievance. We had a carrier who would go in a tub in the back of the vehicle.
No.
And then threw it on somebody's lawn. And they had to call the carrier to go back and go get it. And he had to go back and pick up the tub, and they said, oh, look, we won't write you up, but go back and go get the damn tub and bring it back.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God.
I hope they didn't use the tub.
I was just going to say,
I hope that tub's not back in circulation.
Sometimes fire is a good thing.
Right? Yeah. And some of those, once in a while, I look at like a tub, like, does someone shit in this? Now, probably there's a chance. So that's terrible.
So one of the things that came to my attention is with this podcast is like, who the fuck we're going to interview? And
that was the last choice.
You're technically
you're the only one who said yes. All right.
Right.
You're technically the first city letter carrier on here. So technically
I came for the door prize. So
you came to my attention mostly a year ago with you being in social media groups, being a steward, and you're very your way of thinking is different than the status quo of the stewards, and that's pretty good. And then the other thing that came to light is the fact that you did a contract campaign up in New Hampshire against the status quo, right? Like Renfro was like, oh, we're almost there. It's already been like 500 days. And everyone's like, all right, clearly he's lying to us. But we don't see any branches coming out against the administration. So if you can you talk about why you broke the status quo and organized a rally? And if there's any branch presidents listening, what guidance can you give them for tips and tricks in case this contract does get voted down and we actually need to organize a nationwide contract rally to get the arbitrators to give us a better contract?
Okay, so first of all, disclaimer, it was actually 3 branches from New Hampshire that did that. So it wasn't just our branch, branch 72 out of Concord and branch 230 out of Nashua. So it was a 3-branch get together. But But the reason we came together, is it didn't seem right. I mean, we were waiting forever and forever, and it's been my mantra that the longer we wait, the more money that the Postal Service keeps in their pocket that belongs to us. And you want to pick a day where you don't want the contract to be settled yesterday, and you have your event planned the next day to still wait. But then there comes a point where how long do you wait? How long do you wait before we're speaking up? So we knew that some contract rallies were getting organized around the country, and it just happened that we timed ours to be first, I think, or one of the first, and kind of happy about it. It was a really good turnout. We had carriers there in the streets flagging down cars, and we had people stopping and asking what was. We actually had a couple of teenage kids walk by and said, "You know what? We believe in your cause," and they were holding our signs for a couple hours. So I thought it was fantastic.
Awesome.
You guys got on the press too, which was huge. That kind of was all around. Me and Chris threw a rally the week after that, and getting yours on the press and the news was a huge point with getting more people across the nation involved in it.
Yeah, it was a huge boost because, I mean, Capone and I, another guy, Ryan, that we were like the three of us when we started off, and we're like, I don't know if we can pull off a rally. Maybe we shouldn't do it. And then, we got a few more people, but we were kind of pessimistic. Then we saw, I turned on the news and I'm like, tell my wife, Steph, look, oh my God, we're on the news. I'm like, did everyone see this? And people were texting me. They're like, hey, did you hear about this rally in New Hampshire? Because you did it a few days before. That's why, because we were going to do it on Indigenous Peoples Day, but yours was on. So that really was a great motivator for a lot of us. I'm like, okay, we're doing it. If New Hampshire can do it, we could do it. So it was a huge rallying point for us that it can happen. And that day, what was there, 30 cities, I think, on that day? So you were the first. So it was definitely nice. I know all the things around the country, all the social media sites were talking about your rally. So that was great.
That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. Just have a question too, because you've been around for a while. I've been a carrier for 9 years, so I've never seen any organized rally by any branch, rank and file, or anything. Was there more rallies when you started off? Because I've heard that in the 90s there were rallies, but
Yeah.
were they more of a thing? Because I've been to zero of the ones we organized. I've been to zero.
So I think this is probably the second one that I've been to. There was one in the 90s where we were fighting for, I think it was
Harder work, higher pay.
yeah.
Yep.
And back then, but I think back then National was on board with us. We weren't actually rallying against National. We were rallying with National. But this is the first time, in my knowledge, that we've actually. And I think it's social media. I think that people connecting, saying, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And now you have groups of people that can talk to each other and say, we're all pissed off. So.
Even since 06, they had the, I don't know if they did it up in New Hampshire. I know they did it here in Boston with the 5-day, Save the 5-day rally in 06, where, National was on board in that. We had politicians come up to the Boston Common, and it definitely seemed like there was all of a sudden a break where they don't want to be involved in doing this stuff, where as soon back as 06 they were.
Well, I mean, if you look at the consolidation right now, the postal consolidation, you don't want to get involved. Our union doesn't want to get involved. And I mean, services in our name, and where are we?
Yeah, that is fair. Speaking of, in regards to the contract, the job, what is the biggest change to the letter carrier you've seen since you started? The most damaging thing, and what's the most biggest change you've seen in the Renfro era? Or
I guess job-wise, I think the biggest change is we're spending a lot more time on the street, and that's probably good for the Postal Service because they can pinch our office time, but it's harder work. I mean, we're out there in the cold, we're out there in the heat. I'm sure there were people getting hurt, back in the day, but not like today.
Way more taxing on the body.
Oh yeah, you're out there 6 hours in the cold or 6 hours in the heat. You have the Eugene Gates situation where people succumb to the heat, and it's not brand new, but this is kind of new in the epidemic form that it's in now. I mean, there's so much street work. But as far as the union, my opinion, I think the tentative agreement and the uproar we've had over the tentative agreement, I don't think that's the illness. I think that's a symptom of the bigger picture. To me, I think the union has become disconnected with the membership. I honestly think that the days are gone by where they pay attention to what we're dealing with on the workroom floor. They have their own problems up there, and they think that we're down here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I since I've started, I would have to say our MOU and the stationary events and being a carrier for 18 years, the past 4 years, having these two huge things that really changed our job massively. It seems almost as big as when FSS kicked in. I wasn't here when DPS kicked in, but I was here when FSS did. And this hour office time, the stationary events, they're using the covert means. It's not being called out as much as it had been. Management now has the ability to watch you on the computer, and we're not fighting that. A national thing has been a huge change for this job.
And you know how easy that would be to fix? I've actually brought this up to national. All we have to do is have a grievance starter, have a couple of people from every state take a picture of the scanner where it says you're 500 feet from a mailbox, and the mailbox is right in front of you.
Yeah.
And show that they're not accurate. And if you had that grievance starter with like 200, 300 pictures of the scanner being wrong, I mean, how much evidence would that be in our grievance?
Oh, yeah. Paul, I've been holding on to one where when we got our scanners in the morning, we have the dog warning listings. And my scanner and the carrier was the scanner next to mine. His says it's 4 miles away. Mine says 300 feet. Same dog, same address.
Yeah, right?
They're completely different. So how can you get away with using that for disciplinary means? And you're 100% right. A grievance starter, getting an attack on it where it seems we're actually more told not to as much as wish we would. Like, let's get on it, bring it to a national scale and fight it.
Yeah. So you and I, with this one example, I mean, how strong is that? It's not that strong. But if we had this 200-page grievance starter, every time they pulled the stationary event shit, we put that in our grievance, they would start learning real quick that the scanners aren't bulletproof.
Yeah. How often are they updated? Where's the proof of the update? What's the refresh rate on these things? We are not given any information. And there is like no grievance starter, no ability to go about it.
So I was working on a grievance starter one time, and I actually looked up the scanner model and the manual on the scanner that we have. And there's actually a troubleshooting guide for if the GPS is not accurate. So that tells you that sometimes it's not
manufacturers admitting it.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. I had to do the same thing with the telematics in our new LLVs where I had filed a grievance on it. And I had to go to the manufacturer website and list off all the recalls that they had called on this thing, saying these are issues that are going on with these telematics, and saying, well, how are you going to use this when it's constantly having all these issues, there's constant recalls on it that we're not informed about? I have to go to the website and find the manufacturer recalls on it.
Right. And why can't that be in a national grievance starter? You know, if you ask them right now if they're doing anything about stationary events, they think, well, just tell them you're working. It's not that
minor
easy
inconvenience.
To get people that are disciplined for it.
Yeah, minor inconvenience.
Paul, there's a Facebook group. I think it was Ask a Steward. Someone talked about like, oh, my manager was trying to discipline me off of my my telematics clicking into the seatbelt.
Yeah.
And one of the stewards in there was like, that's not possible. But it is possible, right? Like if the telematics program is hooked up to the computer and the ProMaster is hooked up to the seatbelt, they could easily tell. The managers are easily able to tell if you have your seatbelt clicked or not. You jumped in, you legit had proof that part of the telematics could hook up to the seatbelt.
It says it right there in the description of what it does. Yeah. And you think they might not use this all by itself, but if they say, hey, I caught John without a seatbelt, and now they've got this too, it's that much harder to beat.
Giving them the ability in the contract we had signed with the telematics, it also says that they'll be able to give report cards to the station managers based on the vehicle. And they say, oh, well, you won't know the driver. But if Paul drives truck 410 every single day, they're going to know truck 410. And they're saying, well, we're not using it now, but you're giving them the ability to use it. And in 4 or 5 years, as we've always seen, and this has happened in past companies that have used telematics, companies that have filed grievances, the union, they said we weren't going to use it. 4 or 5 years later, they start using it. Same with our scanners. It's not going to be used stationary. It's to help the customer with parcels. 4 years later, it is being used against us.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I know also that like UPS was fighting the same thing too. They have cameras facing them. And that was a big struggle in their contract campaign. And I think they negotiated it down to that management vehicles that they can't listen in and they can't use it only if there's a car accident. But right now they're behind the scenes as people saying that like management is watching and they can listen. They can just turn it on whenever they want. They didn't remove the equipment, but I'm just waiting for Renfro to give that up. I mean, he's given everything else to management that they've wanted, but I am also just concerned of how this is going to happen because if the technology is already in there. They're just going to try. All right, we'll give you an extra 20-cent raise. What do you say? We'll go ahead and now we can start making. We can use this against you.
Yeah,
That's the concern.
Why doesn't the technology ever work in our favor? Like for certified letters. So certified letters, right here. You got certified letters now. They're taken out of the mail stream. We don't see them. Okay, but on our scanners, it tells us how many are in our DPS and where they are. So why can't you still go over and pick them out of your DPS and do your office work according to the M39?
Hell, when they do give us something that helps us, they take it away. For a short period of time with the scanners, there was a wonderful feature of marking off an address as vacant, or that, to stop getting the Ford. I got a letter every single day, John Murphy. Scan the barcode. John Murphy doesn't live here. I should never get that letter again. They set up that, the edit book system. And then they took it away from us and shut it all down and said, no, we're not going to allow you to use it anymore. That was a feature that, the post office, at least in my office, wasn't telling the carriers how to do. So I was going around telling every carrier, like, hey, here's how this feature works. And the carriers were loving it. And then it's, oh, yeah, no, it's no longer available to you guys.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
It's amazing.
What was your biggest issue with the tentative agreement, besides the CCA situation and the pay? We know that is, those are big issues for everybody.
My biggest issue, I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but at the national convention, there was a resolution that actually became part of our tentative agreement that if there was a violation of Article 8, the 50% would automatically be paid. Now, if that happens, all of these places that have 200, 300, 400% remedies, how is that going to go before an arbitrator if he says that we've accepted 50% to the point that we're actually paying it out automatically? There's no way they're going to give us that 100, 200%. So as an advocate, I can see that roadblock coming up real quick.
It's the same thing with the 60-hour violation. The offices that have huge settlements for going over 60 hours, and then it says you can volunteer, and this is non-grievable now. That takes away their ability to grieve these guys that have had insane remedies. I think it's Lake Charles, Louisiana, has something insane like $1,000 per time working over 60 hours.
Yeah,
that grievance is now gone. They lose that settlement.
And if you don't think that management is going to say you volunteered, whether you did or not, now you can prove that that's true too.
Absolutely.
Oh, the supervisor heard you say it. Yep. Yeah, the supervisor. Yeah. We both heard you say it, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, it's only for OTDL. After you read the language of it, the volunteering is for non-OTDL only. OTDL, you will be forced to do over 60.
Yeah.
There's no protection for the OTDL in that.
Oh. And the minute you start doing that, what's your argument that it's for safety that you want to send these carriers home? There's no absolute anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And gives management the ability to choose who they works over 60. So if you have 3 carriers, non-OTDL, all volunteer, they can pick and choose favorites. We'd rather have Mike do it than John. We're going to have Mike do it. Mike will get it done faster. You gave management the ability to control it.
Yeah. That wasn't broken. I don't think we should fix it. I mean, I don't think carriers should be forced to work extra hours, but maybe the way to do that is to make. I mean, it's already in the contract. It's absolute. I mean, the 40 and the 60 are absolute, or the 60 and the 12 and 60 are absolute. So what good is it to have something now that says you won't be disciplined? You shouldn't be disciplined. It was already absolute. Now is it absolutely absolute? What the hell? What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the takeaway I got, was that some of the stuff like the fixed office time and this overtime stuff, he obviously gave that to get something in return. So what did we get in return? I mean, we've got an average contract. There's some people out there who are really fiercely against what was offered, like I am, and I think probably a lot of you are. And there's other people that are afraid to go to arbitration, but nobody's excited about it.
No one. No.
And you make a good point, Paul. We had these things. We had to have gotten something. And what did we get? We didn't get the uniforms. The uniforms program sucks. I had a poor carrier who came up to me and asked, he's a black area. I am in a suburb area. And he said, I don't feel really fully comfortable delivering to these houses in the dark when I don't have a uniform. And I can't afford a uniform. And on top of that, what they're giving me is an extra $22. And, every 2 years, I can save it. How does that help a younger carrier that needs a uniform today? A guy like me, 18 years, I can save the 2 years. Fine, I can save it for 2 years. Maybe I want to buy 2 new jackets in 2 years. I'll just save it in a pair of boots.
Yeah.
But for younger carrier, they need that uniform now. And we're giving them used uniforms like they're the younger brother of the post office. You got my hand-me-down that I wore for 18 years.
And answer me this, John, right? So the uniform program that we've got now, if we don't use what we're given, the credit card company keeps a portion of it or most of it.
Citibank makes tons of money off of
So
us.
why
really?
in the world are we not getting something out of that? What are they?
Yeah.
They're making the interest off of the money in there, plus they're getting all this forfeited money. Who the hell ever thought of forfeiting
Citibank made
money?
an unbelievable deal with that. Yes, if you do not spend your whole allowance or a portion of it, Citibank keeps the money.
So
So
to me,
they're making
that's the
tons
most
of money.
ludicrous. I mean, why don't we just approach American Express and say, "Hey, will you do this just for free?"
And think about how much money that is over what? We have 200,000 letter carriers?
Yeah.
And
$400.
$455?
Yeah.
478? I mean, that could almost probably reach 500,000 that Citibank is getting in their pocket.
Yeah.
Carriers not spending nationwide. I mean, I probably know at least 10 carriers on my station that missed the deadline, or towards the end and say, yeah, screw it, I'm not going to use it this year.
I don't want to say it, but I will. But is somebody getting a kickback from that? Because I mean, why
it's
would
called
we do it?
Citibank. Yeah, it's them. Like the
makes no
CEO
sense to
gets a
me.
bonus. Yeah.
It makes no sense to me that we forfeit the money and it doesn't go back to the post office. It goes to this credit card company. They're already making money off the interest. I don't get it.
Yeah.
If we're speaking of the uniforms, I'm down here in Florida, so it got dark later, and I heard
and you got snow too. You're suffering with an inch of snow.
Yeah.
So I read the text message earlier that Paul was like, "Hey, I'm doing a cut. It's getting dark out. Sorry." And I was like, "Oh, the sun's still up down here. I'm so sorry." So I wonder what Paul's thoughts are on the fact, and it must happen across the country because it happens down here. Speaking of uniforms, when managers give out headlamps to the workers, what are your thoughts on that? I see Richie Ray's in the chat, and I agree with him that we should, as a workforce, absolutely refuse, as a union, the acknowledgement of headlamps, because we should, A, be fighting for an earlier start time. 2, it's not even part of the uniform allowance. And 3, what happens when you get injured or robbed or something like that, and your manager's like, you put yourself in an unsafe working condition, that's your fault.
That's the part that worries me the most right there, is that once you start giving them that, they're going to start using it against you. Same thing with grippers on your feet. So if you wear grippers and you're on slick cement, it's worse than having none at all. But if you fall, it's your fault because you should have worked safely, no matter what. So the minute you start using something that's not your uniform that they're giving you, you're starting to rely on it, then you're putting yourself in pretty much in their domain. I mean, they can tell you, hey, you didn't do it. Everyone else is safe except for you because James, you didn't wear a freaking headlamp.
Yeah. They'll always push it back towards, well, you shouldn't have been doing that.
Yeah.
Most of us are just trying to deliver the mail. If I'm in the dark and I miss a pothole because I'm wearing the headlamp, well, you shouldn't have been on that street. Well, how the hell can I see the pothole when I got this little 3-inch light on my head and I'm just trying to deliver the mail? I mean, that is the point of OWCP and Workman's Comp, is for situations like that where I'm not doing anything out of the norm. I'm doing my job. Unfortunately, in the situation, I'm doing it in the dark. And with start times being pushed back across the country, John and Richie Ray are right. It is asinine that we are taking this and saying, okay, that's fine. We'll stay out later, move our start times to 9:30. Around here, it's getting dark around 5. All right, so now I'm 9:30. My route ends at 5. Say I got a 2-hour split. I'm 2.5, 3 hours in the dark when I could have been done earlier, but we're letting them do it, push our start times back and just taking the headlamp and going, all right, I'll just stay in the dark.
Capone, what time's your start time?
We start at 8.
Ours is 7:30, but there are stations that are 9:30.
Paul, you're 8?
I'm at 8.
You're 8, I'm 7:30.
I'm 7. I as much as I don't like management, we got some managers who are like, you guys can start at 7 if you want. So They have been compliant, but 9:30 is insane. Like
they should be trying to get us in and out as soon as possible. Get them out of the office. During the summer, you get less time out in the heat before the sun really rises. During the winter, you get more time in the light. Get the carriers in, get them out to the street. They control the trucks. They control the flow of the mail.
That could have been something that we worked on.
If we wanted to.
We could have worked on that on a national level in this tentative agreement.
Yeah.
Paul, when you first started, what was the start time? And did you come in as a CCA or PTF?
I came in as a PTF, and the start time was, I think it was 7 o'clock, 6:30, or I think some routes were 6:30 if they had businesses, and some were 7 o'clock. So it's only gone in the wrong direction, and I mean, I don't know how we stop it. I mean, so it takes something like Eugene Gates passing away for them to change the start time in that office.
And they didn't even do it yet nationwide,
I thought they did.
In some places. I mean, and that's one of the disappointing things. After Eugene Gates, they should have had every single one of us on the street corners throwing a tizzy. They should have been in the press, especially after the falsification of our training records, and made a huge statement about this and said, you know what, no carrier is going to be out there starting late, dealing with this. We went from, and Paul, you've been here years, I've been here 18 years, in regards to, I remember being told all the time, take breaks as needed in the heat. Always told, take breaks as needed as heat.
Yep.
Now my scanner tells me every time during the summer and the winter, because whoever's getting paid $250,000 a year to put messages in the scanner just gets to reuse the same messages in the winter. Take heat breaks as on authorized breaks.
Yeah, we got one of those. I was at a district safety convention, and somebody called me and said, "We just got this on our scanner." I'm like, "You got to be shitting me!" Here we are at a safety convention, and our carriers are getting this message. Make sure you cool off during your authorized breaks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm about to pass out. It's only noon. I'll wait till 1 o'clock to pass out because that's my authorized break.
Right.
Paul, what meeting was that? With the post office you were at?
Yeah, it was a post office like district safety meeting where the union was invited, and I mean there was hundreds of people there. I think it was in Portland, Maine, or Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I can't remember which. It was years ago, but oddly enough, we had a guy who collapsed at the meeting, and nobody knew CPR or how to treat him. Out of hundreds of people there.
That's another thing. I remember they used to give CPR training to the safety teams in the offices, and that went by the wayside because they don't want to pay for it.
Well, I missed this post office. I've been here 9 years. This sounds like a great post office from like 15 years ago where they train you. They gave you like take breaks as you need. This is I mean, for any CCA, this is not even me. I've been here 9 years. I'm blown away that they do any of this. Jesus.
I never felt they fully cared about us, but there was a time where they actually treated us like we were human beings. To now where it's we are cattle. Get out of my office in an hour. Let's go. What are you doing? Get to the street, load your vehicle in 22 minutes, break that geo fence, and you better be back in 8 hours.
Yeah, right down to
the worst carrier.
Right down to the shock collar when you hit that 5 minutes to stationary time, right?
Right? Yeah. That's the next thing, a shock collar on all of us. The scanner vibrates when you hit 5 minutes.
Yeah. Telematics is going to shock you through the pedal.
You got to be mindful also that Amazon workers, some of the facilities, I believe, they have, instead of scanners, they have scanners as well, but they also have necklaces that have GPS on them and stuff like that too, for tag like badges. So the technology is out there, and we could joke about it, but as we've all just said, like it's slowly making its way here. As we approach like the half-hour mark, I kind of want to jump into the convention, the 2024 NALC convention. And this was my first convention, and I said it on the last podcast on Wednesday when our president, Brian Renfro, was brought up on charges. The entire row in front of me was at Gillette Stadium watching the Patriots training instead of actually listening to the charges against Renfro. And then look at Friday when the SNDC centers were being talked about and the open bargaining was talked about. Half the convention was gone. The entire state of Pennsylvania was missing on Friday. And people were like, oh, well, this is not a normal convention. But it's like, this is our governing body right here. The delegates are there for 5 days. And as a first-time delegate, I wasn't disheartened, like, right? It's union bureaucracy. This is why I try to stay away from this bullshit. It's not disheartening, but it's just frustrating because the whole thing is the rhetoric is, oh, it's union presidents going there on vacation. They're going up there to like waste our union dues. So I would like to see what Paul, who's been here for 30 years, has to say about the convention. Do you think the convention actually represents the membership, and how do you think we could change the convention format as in delegates and the structure moving forward?
All right, I got some ideas on that. So first of all, I think that the worst thing that they do is they use that call for the question and debate way too soon, and you're preying on the people who do just want to get the hell out of it. There's people who just want to stop all talk because they don't care about what's being talked about. And if you're there, you should care about what's being talked about. But I got a personal stake on how they do the resolutions, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but let's say John's got a resolution for I don't know, 8 o'clock start times across the country. Okay, John proposes. You don't get to talk first, and you don't get to talk last. So if the national union does not agree with your resolution, they're going to put somebody on the stage for an unlimited amount of time that represents the entire executive council, and they're going to talk about why you're wrong. Then you're going to get 2 minutes, and then they're going to have people after that talking against you again, and then they're going to vote on it. So how is that fair for you not to be able to rebut what's been said? And the other part of that equation is when people are coming up to talk, some of these people are on the executive council and they've already talked once for their spokesperson, right? So you get an unlimited amount of time to talk at the beginning through a spokesperson for the entire executive council who votes against you. And then people come up again. You have business agents saying, well, I'm the business agent of region 775 and John's wrong. His whole region's like, well, we love this guy. So yeah, John's wrong. Why not let the rank and file talk about resolutions? I think it's so political. And that's one of the things I hate about our union right now is it's almost a feeling of royal blood. If the president says something, there's a bunch of people, national officers that are going to cater to whatever he says. And they'll even speak out against their members just to make sure that they're going along with their leader. And I think it's terrible. I mean, I think you're right. Not enough people go to those conventions with the right intent.
In regards to resolutions, I actually have a question on your stance on one of them. My old union rep, Bobby DeMartin, brought up T-Cola. T-Cola has been brought up convention after convention after convention.
Yep.
And he had worked on it at the state level. And this year, now specifically, which we've seen such a huge change in how expensive things have gotten, where these coastal cities, it's near impossible to afford to live in. At a letter carrier salary, I believe Massachusetts and Boston, I want to say they expect you need to make around $90,000 a year as a single person to survive in Massachusetts.
We're one of the top three most expensive areas to live in.
Yeah. My daughter lives in Boston. I can vouch for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was the year for the whole T-Cola thing. And, what is your stance on something like that? I know a lot of people said, one union, one pay scale. But we're in a bad situation where a lot of these places can't hire anybody, because how can you work for $20 an hour and afford rent where rents are $3,000 an hour? A lot of 2 bedrooms in Boston, even I'm 14, 15 miles out of the city, a 2 bedrooms, $3,000 a month.
So I think the principle of T-Cola is a great idea, but I don't think you should make it a part of a declared pay. Like our COLA gets rolled into our pay. I think if we're going to do like a T-Cola, maybe we should do like, I don't know, percentage of whatever your pay is as a separate portion of your paycheck, so that we don't, because what people are going to say is, well, if John's making more, someone's going to be making less. So I'm not just making what I deserve. I'm making less because you're making more. So they're not going to see it that way. But if you put it in a separate category, like Boston locality pay, $1 an hour, whatever it is, and add that to your paycheck instead of being a part of your paycheck or a part of your salary. It's separate and above. But I think it's got to be something done. I mean, you're right. You can't. If someone living out in the Midwest and someone living in Boston, Massachusetts, you're not living by the same standards at all.
Yeah, nowhere near.
Yeah. it's kind of comical, right? I'm down here in Florida and people are like colas, and I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. But when I was at the convention, I was at my old bar, the Sidebar in Boston, which I recommend if anyone needs a good high scale dive bar.
Oh, it's a nice place.
And then I accidentally, by default, sitting at the bar, there was two organizers from SEIU 32BJ, and they're like, "Hey, you guys a union?" And it was like me and a couple of guys from California. Then there was a couple of people behind us, and I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And we ended up talking. And in Waltham, Massachusetts, which is 15 miles outside of Boston, janitors for a university start off at $30 an hour, full benefits, full health care paid for by the employer, and retirement benefits with no college education. And when people talk about like the pay and all that, that's one example of a career that you don't need a college education for. You can literally just apply. You're cleaning a college campus for $30 an hour starting with a union. And that's what a lot of people say, like, oh, you're making $19 an hour as a CCA with no benefits, but at least you have a union. And it's like, yeah, that could have been cool like in 1990s, but like our benefits are crap and our union is really not doing much when it comes to standing up for the CCAs. So the COLA question is a valid question for the new hires, because there's a lot of new workers that can't actually fund their retirement benefits, right? Like you become a regular, and it's like, hey, like put the 5% in to match, and it's like, I can't afford that. Okay, get the health insurance. I can't get the high option. I'm going to get the market rate one. Okay, or I'll just skip it, right? Like I don't have dental insurance because I pretty much go to Europe for dental work, but there's a lot of things that like our top brass and senior carriers are ignoring, and the T-COLA is an issue I think going to keep coming up. But like Paul said, it's going to make people say like, oh, but I'm getting paid less. So it's tied into the wage increases, and something needs to be done, or else we're going to keep losing good workers. And I say good workers in terms of age. In my office, I'm 37 years old. I got in at 35 years old. So it's already like 15 years later than should be for a new career, right? And the CCAs that are coming in now are like 40, 50, 60 years old, right? And it's like, that's not sustainable workforce. That is not a sustainable workforce as a service industry. We're delivering dog food. We're out there 12 hours a day. How can you expect someone that's 50 years old that already worked previous jobs before to stay and actually be able to provide a service? And my question with Paul now is, what is the average age you're seeing CCAs and PTFs come into your union?
Wow. So it's ironic you should say that, because my last arbitration that we had, the hearing was about 3 weeks ago, and I defended a PTF carrier who was about 64 years old, and he had 1 year in.
Holy shit.
So, I mean, you're absolutely right. We're not attracting young people who are looking for a career. And you know, the COLA is part of it, because the COLA does not keep up with inflation. I think it keeps up with like 40% the rate of inflation.
It doesn't include housing or something. I've heard it explained,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
everything else, which housing's kind of pricey.
But I mean, even when it doesn't include it, doesn't include it at 100%. We get about 40% the rate of inflation. So every year we're making a little bit less towards the rate of inflation, and it just keeps. I mean, back in when I started in the late 80s, mid 80s, if you want the truth, this was a job where if you got a job at the post office, you didn't go to college, because you couldn't get that kind of money coming out of college. Now you can get this kind of money coming out of McDonald's, and it's just eaten away. It's not just this contract. It's been a slow decline over the years, where we're just losing track of our standing in the job scale.
And you're right about that, Paul. I believe McDonald's in my area, they're hiring at $20 an hour. You can get control of schedule. You're not really having a boss breathe down your throat the way you do here. And we're trying to get these people here with that understanding. And, you know, you're 100% right. This job used to pay well. When I came out, I was a city kid. I grew up in Hyde Park, and you either worked for the city, you worked for the MBTA, maybe you became a cop or a firefighter, or you became a letter carrier. You know, that was your goals. I ended up a letter carrier. It was a huge win. It was, oh, it's great. Congratulations, you became a letter carrier. And then I see these kids come to my office now, you know, a lot of them 30 years old, something like that. they got to live at home because they can't afford a mortgage. They can't afford to get an apartment. My first paycheck at this job, I went out and got an apartment with my roommate. It was like first time living alone. Oh, this is great. The job afforded me the life I have. It's not doing it for these other guys. Which brings me to the question: what do you think we should do about the CCA situation? I know we talked about complete workforce. You've been here a while, so we had casuals, we had TEs, we have
Right.
CCAs. Do you feel a full-time workforce is feasible, or do we go back to one of those situations where it's a smaller time frame? What do you feel about this situation?
So I think it's perfectly feasible to have a career workforce with part-time flexibles and regulars. And I think I think that we should have gone into this tentative agreement and told the Postal Service, the CCA position is not working. We can't retain employees. No one wants to work here if it's not a career position. So right off the table, we should be saying we're not going to accept a temporary workforce. Let's deal from there. And if you can't do that, that should have been the die on the hill moment, because the post office obviously can't sustain us with with the CCA workforce. We don't want a CCA workforce. Why are we bargaining for a CCA workforce? We're giving away something that really we shouldn't have to fight for. It should be in our pockets, in my mind.
Just a question I have for you too, just to piggyback on something you said about UPS too, or USPS. But like I remember when I worked at UPS in 2002. Their leader, it was James Hoffa Jr. James Hoffa, a great man, maybe not good at picking friends. James Hoffa Jr. is a joke. Ashamed to his father, who was a real fighter back in the day, but. The pay I was getting at UPS was $8.50 an hour, which was pretty good for me at like 17. But I remember when the casuals came up, that was $15 an hour, and that was like double the money. It was insane. I'm like, I was debating on going. That's how good like a post office job was. And like what Capone was saying was that like if you got the post office, like I mean, my friend, a kid in my neighborhood grew up, like, his mom, she worked there. The dad was a nice guy. He couldn't really hold down a job, but nice guy. But she was always the one, she was a letter carrier. She worked at the post office, and they could afford a simple, it wasn't a modest home. They paid a mortgage, she was a bread, and they had a kid, and they lived pretty comfortably. They went on like that's where they were in like 1984 probably. And now you have CCAs. I mean, I talked to the young kids here, like, we have a couple of them are young, and it's like I work 50 hours a week and I still can't get ahead on these wages at all. Like this job is not keeping up with it. The Teamsters, and I'm going to go back again about the T-Cola. The Teamsters have regional pay. It's not like this is a foreign, weird, pie-in-the-sky concept. The Teamsters have this built into their contract 2 contracts ago about regional differences. Because, yes, everyone gets a base pay, but they know Boston, Dallas, big cities, because you can't, people are going to have to drive. They're going to have to live 45 minutes away from the city. And that's a long ass commute. Like, that's part of your day. If you're working 12 hours a day and you're driving 45 minutes, that's your whole life. The union was built on the concept of 8, 8, and 8. 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of recreation. And it seems like our leadership with Renfro and Barner and all them is like, no, it's fine. Whatever management wants, we're going to get them out of it. So I just, it's just sad because when I talk to people who've been around since the 80s, it sounds like we're on to it. Even when you're talking about like they taught CPR, like I'm on the safety committee. That's a great demand. I should be taught CPR. Like I was certified years ago, different job, but like it's not hard. The Red Cross does it for really cheap. It's not like it's like you have to go for a 5-week class, but it's just sad. I'm just really sad about that. But I didn't have any other question.
You're not wrong, Chris, because even when we don't place a limit on the daily hours, somebody can work 16 hours a day. We're actually filling those holes for staffing that we would have as an argument for hiring a better workforce. I mean, we're doing management a favor right now where they would have to hire people and pay them the money they deserve. But instead of that, we're willing to work 16 hours a day to take that off your chest. I mean, why would we agree to something like that?
So, Paul, here's a question I want to get your statement on. So you've been here since mid-'80s, we'll say. So you're here with Sombrado.
Yes.
Sombrado was always our fighter. Everybody I hear, Sombrado, they all want to idolize with Sombrado. What do you think Sombrado would feel like about the NALC right now? He left in what, 02, 04? So he was from
Yeah.
78 to 04.
I
Longest serving president we've had. What would he stance be?
I think he would be rolling in his grave right now, man. I'll tell you, I think, I always tell people that if you can't fight, what the hell are you doing here? That's the first thing I tell my stewards is, don't make a deal. You got to fight for what's yours. How can we give away what we give away? And I mean, I think I said at the beginning, communication is the biggest thing that we're lacking right now. Why didn't our national president ask us what's important to us? Is it the career workforce? Is it the two-tier wage system? He doesn't even know. If this tentative agreement doesn't go through, he still doesn't know what was important to us. He never asked.
Yeah, not a single time in any of those. Like he went on the Valley Labor Report. Not once did he seem to say the carriers wanted X. They wanted all. Like he doesn't talk about what we wanted. It's all about, well, management. They're losing money, and it's really like he's not like we have. I have members sleeping in cars. That's over. Like I'm not standing up for that. Like I mean, give it to the was it the longshoreman strike? That guy? Like, I'll shut this whole country down. I don't care. That's the fire we needed.
Yeah.
And we don't have that with this Renfro guy who's just playing it's just, I can't believe that people, he beat those charges at the convention, but I really do feel hopeful. And I know we all can guess, but today's the last day for voting. I think it's the 23rd, right? So it's today. We're going to find out soon. I'm making my prediction that I think we're going to have a very strong no vote on this too. I think this is, and what's your take on I mean, it's hard to predict, but what do you think of how I think the vote's going to go?
It's hard to gauge because, all of us on social media are like, there's a couple of people that are saying yes, just because they're Facebook trolled, but everyone is saying no.
Right.
But you don't know about the people who are sitting there at home who don't have social media and don't. Well, everybody should, but some people are just like, well, I want my check right now, and this is what we're always going to get. So this is what we're always going to get. I think it was the Revolutionary War. There was 3% that actually were willing to fight, and the rest weren't. So, I mean, how many people are not willing to fight and just take whatever's handed to them? I don't know.
And we've talked about that in past episodes where 100 years ago, the labor movement, you'd have guys going out there with baseball bats and have union breakers that would come and beat the shit out of them, down to a point where the labor movement now is you have a lot of guys that just don't want to even stand up and talk. They don't want to invoke their rights, which is their right to not invoke them. But we go from fighters to, well, yeah, but that's a Thursday night. I really want to come down and do that. I'm busy. It's my favorite shows on that night or whatever. And what has happened to our fight and drive from those days?
But one of my goals when I took over as president of our branch was to get more active members involved. We would have more retired members at our meetings than active members, and God bless them. I mean, the experience and the tenure there is incredible. I mean, but where are the active members who have a vested interest in their future? Where are they? But we're starting to see more of them. It's starting to shape up. So I have to be thankful for that.
I think this TA got them moving.
Does your branch do hybrid meetings with Zoom meetings or anything?
So we have not started that yet, but that's in the works. We've got a lot of people talking about it and a lot of people who are willing to work on it. I think the problem is it has to be in your bylaws. So we have to actually get a bylaw committee together. I know there's one of my members just texted me. He had a question, and I know he's listening, and he wants to be on the bylaw committee. So, Paul, I hear you. We're going to do it. All
right. So next time you're on, hopefully it's a Zoom meeting process.
Yeah.
And also, the question I have is, what advice do you give CCAs and PTFs or just anyone new? Because I know like CCAs they're going to be afraid. PTFs are pretty afraid, and then like regulars, they just try to keep the nose down either. So what advice do you give CCAs and PTFs? And then also the second part is, to tie it in, is creating an issue statement, right? There's a grievance. And as Capone just said, like one of the hardest things, I'm not a steward or anything. That's a whole different story. But the vibe is across the country is one of the hardest things for stewards to do is to actually get the carrier to write a statement. How do you suggest, or what's your tips and tricks on how to get new people actually to feel empowered and stand up for themselves?
So I guess the first thing, I've got a friend who actually just started as a PTF about maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And he's going through hell right now with the hours he's working. He just got hurt on the job. He twisted his ankle. And he's told me a couple of times, I'm thinking about turning in the towel. I said, listen, you're making a ton of money right now, right? He goes, yeah, but I'm working a lot of hours. Go buy yourself something. So he's got a Jeep and he bought something for his Jeep, and it's kind of, you gotta enjoy life too. Even though as a PTF or CCA, you're not gonna have much life for that first year or so or whatever it is, but you gotta make the best of it. And as far as empowering people, I think a lot of people who don't work in a union environment don't know. Well, I think one of our former branch presidents said it best: when you start working at the postal service, the first day you start working is the first day that they're looking for a way to fire you. And it's not like the real world. You don't go anywhere where letters of warning and 7-day suspensions are handed out every day. If you go to another business, a bank or something like that, they're like, what the hell's going on at the post office? Is it a game? Is this make believe? You're really disciplining people for every single move they make. It's ridiculous, I mean, but you have to get into that mindset where you have to be able to defend yourself here, because that's the kind of ideology they have. It's them and us, and we're worthless, and they're doing everything right. Management, that is.
And Paul, you're 100% right. When I started as a casual, I was one of the guys like, hey, Capone, go carry this split. Capone, go carry that split. They're their guy. One time I couldn't do something for them, they tried to remove me, and they did. They actually had fired me, and my union rep got me back. And at that point, I'd been about a year in. I'd been a clerk before that. And at that point, I was like, you know what? These are the guys that have my back. Those are the guys that are paying attention to me. And that's what got me into wanting to be a rep, was wanting the guys after me to have the same abilities I had. I had a rep that would fight tooth and nail for us. And then when I talked to other carriers across the country, across the state, and their reps aren't fighting for them. Their reps say, yeah, they can do that. Yeah, we're not going to fight that. Yeah, whatever, And it's disheartening. And that pulls people away from the union, and making them realize that you'll fight for them is huge, man. And you're right. These fucking guys will always try to fire us. They're constantly looking for reasons. You don't do something for them today, you are now the bad carrier, even though if you've done stuff for them for the past 20 years. It's what have you done for me today? My question is, what did you feel about TRAP, and how did it compare to the 6-day count procedure? And do you feel there is a fair procedure for route inspections, or is that just a mythology?
So I'm gonna say something that's probably pretty unpopular right now. But if there was a way for us to do evaluated routes, if there was a way to do it fairly, I think that's the direction that we should be looking at. Because right now, everything, if you look at a rural carrier, no one's looking at a rural carrier. No one cares about their stationary events or any of this stuff. You get the job done, you get paid for the route. Now they're paid like shit because their union sucks. But I mean, from where I'm sitting, that would put all of the stress off of carriers. That would have carriers, have the ability to, manage their own day. Some people are saying, can I have a lunch after 6 hours? I just saw a question on one of the Facebook groups. When do I get a lunch? Do I have to take a lunch at 6 hours? It's your day. It's your day. So I know a lot of people are saying that evaluated routes are taboo because of what's happening with the rurals. But I mean, it might be something that we look at in the future.
If the pay is right, if they come up to you and said, hey, this is your route, we're going to pay you top scale $95,000 a year. You're not going to get overtime. Just you get it done when you get it done. I think a lot of carriers would say that. Hey, I may lose a little bit of overtime that I was getting comparatively, but hey, during the summer, it's not as bad. You might have guys that would go for that, and it would save the post office the headache of dealing with some of that. The procedures we've had haven't really worked out. We all know, I don't know how many guys in here have gone through 6-day mail counts on the walks. I have. And it's hell on earth. They lie to you. They'll shake your back while they're stabbing you in the fucking back.
Brother, we just sent the grievance to Step B. It was 2,755 pages. Yeah, that's my baby. That's my baby. On route inspections.
You gotta fight it. And that's the sad thing, is you gotta fight every goddamn minute to get them to do it correctly. And TREP in theory was a good idea, but as everything goes, it's never a good idea. When you put a management and a union guy together, you end up with situations possibly where they can become friends and they turn against the carrier.
Yeah.
And that's
so I think the two big problems we have with TREP was you had union reps who weren't trained well enough to represent the rights of the carriers. You had different levels of training, and you had that limited access that we had to data. So they would tell us stuff, and we had the opportunity to look at what they gave us, but not what they didn't give us. So
And
what,
using
giving
the
us
numbers, yeah, and using the numbers they put in the system as historical data, which anybody who watches the workload status report, they make up the fucking numbers. Those numbers of your flats, that's all made up numbers that we are now pretending are real in regards to historical data.
Yeah, and then you haven't even gotten to the part yet where they started abusing the standards on us. Like have how much office time? You have 22 minutes of fixed office time, 30 minutes. You're out of the office in an hour. All that stuff was not meant to go against carriers, but it was weaponized.
It's always this.
Paul, Josh B down there in Florida says he would like to speak on TRAP if there's time. You mind if I unmute him and see what he has to say?
By all means, just give him a time limit because that son of a bitch can talk.
Come on, Josh.
All right, Josh.
So, real quick, I have a question about Josh. I went to one of his training classes, and I had laid down on my couch where I was listening to it. He asked for any questions, and it's just sitting up, and he calls me right out. He goes, "Well, I see Capone's woken up." I was like, "Oh shit!" I'm like, "I wasn't asleep. I swear to God, I wasn't asleep."
Yeah, so if Josh is there, he can unmute.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey, brother.
Thanks for having me on, guys. So I have an unpopular opinion as well, probably. So it is popular, the first part. We all know our national officers let us down with a lot of stuff in the last 2 years. So one of those things was the certifieds and the DPS. The other thing was Tyree. So it's written horribly. It's written badly. However, the unpopular opinion is that when you have good leadership locally or regionally, you can get around stuff like that. So in Region 9, I think we created hundreds of routes. We didn't lose routes. I mean, obviously we lost routes in some stations, but overall we ended up creating hundreds of routes because we fought back. If the REITs, if they weren't fighting back, they were back on their route the next day, and there was somebody else put into place. Same thing with the certifieds. They even Chris Jackson writes an article on the certifieds saying, well, it does say, in 3.5 whatever, that if they're in the DPS, you handle them like you handle everything else, So he let us down. We were let down by National by them letting all certifieds go in our DPS. So locally, we'd file the grievance, we'd send it up. It'd get to the business agent's office, and he would get us language saying, if you're going to have certifieds in the DPS, they need to be handled in accordance with the ELM. So we got language in some of our offices where they have to print us out the MSTS report, MTS something report every morning until they're on our scanner. Now they're on our scanner. Now that they're on our scanner, we have language that says we have time to do what we're supposed to do. Fill out the first line of the 3849, case that in, sign for them, stuff like that, because they're still accountable items. So we get let down by National, but our region doesn't let us down. And I think it's the same with Tyree. When we get handed a shit sandwich from National, we have to take that shit sandwich and see what we can get with it. So just because we got let down by National doesn't mean we shouldn't be fighting at our local levels. And that's just my opinion about everything that we get let down on locally or nationally, here lately.
And Josh, you're right. I think it was Corey Walton who had mentioned the certifieds. To National is almost taken like, oh yeah, but you're taking it as street time. Don't worry, you're getting street time now. They are so concerned about screw office time. And Corey Walton mentioned, he's right. I'm getting shot at the street. I'm getting robbed on the street. I'm out in the heat. I'm out in the cold. I don't want to be out in the fucking street any more than I'm already out in the street. I want to be in the office where I'm protected. A question for Paul and Josh in regards to the TREP. I keep on hearing people say, we won this. We won a lot of routes. We're winning routes. I don't know how it is in your areas, but I know specifically in my area, Massachusetts, past 10 years, they've been building so many condos, so much construction's been going on. This idea that we're winning routes because of TIARAP has always bothered me, because were we going to win those routes anyways due to the construction that's happening, or was it because of TIARAP? I feel like some areas they touted it as a win of routes being won, when it was because they were already adding to those routes. Those routes hadn't been inspected in 10 years, and since then,
and they were overburdened. That happened in my office too.
Yeah, and they
overburdened
three
routes.
condos there. So did the union win anything, or was it won because of the construction, and we would have won it whether it was 6-day or TIARAP?
I would say that I think that TIARAP cut down a little bit on the fraud that management does in the 6-day counts. We probably did get routes out of it just because they couldn't bullshit as much as they did about time that they took away. But nevertheless, I think we still could have done better. I think TIARAP, if we had full access to the data, I think we probably would have got even more.
And I'm with Paul. You know, you're right, and Paul's right. So like, right, I don't know if anyone's going through section 2 counts right now, but we've gone through 2 of them, and we're losing a route in one office, and we lost a route in another office. We were able to win that grievance at Formal A meeting with the reps, because they didn't give us any of the information. But that's why we won. Otherwise, it would be getting converted right now to them having one less route in the office. So with TIARAP, we couldn't file grievances, but we sent everything up as a what'd they call it? Does anyone remember what they called it when you send it up? Like our guys, our REITs, they sent everything up that they couldn't agree on. So it would get to the business agent's office, and the business agent would get it done. So it was an easier process. It was not written very well, but the joint process was a lot easier than me going in there for 6 days, filing 100 grievances on everything they do, and then waiting 3 months to get the route converted back.
So TIARAP seems like what you guys are saying is a savable process. And considering, I don't know the number that they had spent on it, but I believe it was in the millions in regards to getting it up and running, that it could be a savable process if it's just done in a different way. It seems like what you guys are giving us, which is fair point.
I feel like there's a lot of business agents out there that roll over. I talk up Eddie a lot, but that's because I'll call Eddie with a concern, and he addresses my concern. Right. We had what's that?
I was gonna say, just please wrap up. I would love to have you back on as a separate thing, but
no, absolutely. Right. I'm done.
No. Finish up what you're saying about business agents folding, because that was amazing.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of them are rolling over. And, all business agents kind of have an agenda, but I feel like when you bring something up to certain business agents, mine included, they hear what you're saying and they take care of it. Like the backlog on the DRT. I called a couple times. 2 weeks later, after calling Paul 80 times, and Paul, getting sick of Eddie calling him, not you, Paul, Barner, they gave him the guy's number that's in charge of labor at National, and Eddie called him, and 2 weeks later he had reps in his office, and they had 1,200 files from the DRT that they met on that were all precedent setting and citable, and time limits are not a factor. That's what we did in our region to get rid of the backlog.
Nice.
I'll finish.
Thank you, Josh.
I'll finish up with the TIARAP. I've been in it for 3 years. I was a CCA for 16 months, and then I got awarded probably one of the shittiest routes in Naples, Florida. They called me Midnight Murphy because I was so close at giving a midnight estimate. I got into like 10 p.m. estimates, 10:30.
Holy crap!
Yeah, it was overburdened. So I
bit.
So
that sounds like a good name for a craft beer. Like a good name for a craft beer, Midnight Murphy.
I know. That's your new name for the show. All right, Midnight Murphy. Awesome.
Yeah, so I put him for TIARAP, right? Like such a big route being overburdened, and I only carried it 1 day. one full day because it's like, all right, we're gonna have you carry the first part,
Oh, Jesus.
and then the second day, like we're gonna have you carry like the second part, and then of course the slowest day of the week is a Wednesday. Like you're gonna carry the whole route on a Wednesday, and I was like, all right, like 9.5 hours later, like
No mail that
no
day.
fucking mail,
Magically, nothing in the
but
office.
it's so like one of my complaints with the T-Wrap is, or even I don't know how the other regular route inspection it works, but it should be mandatory that the carrier carries every day for at least a minimum of 8 hours, because not giving me the full route is just absolutely crazy. Like, how can you even compare scanner data between a Monday where it's trash day and a back to work, so you have 2 days plus trash day, to a Thursday where there's no nothing, and it's like you can't do that. So for me, as being a new carrier, the TRAP process was an experiment that's not worth giving up, but it has to have more accountability and more rules. And one of the rules is definitely the carrier should be required to carry the whole route.
The whole thing.
The whole route. Like, even if I'm out there till midnight, fuck it.
They got to get, if they want to credit the route correctly, you carry the whole thing.
Yeah, like everyone in my office was like, what the fuck? So like I got like three hours taken off the route, 3.5 hours, and it didn't create an aux route. They just shoved it into other parts of the 12 zone. Little here, a little there, then they moved a little bit around, and now there's 2 other routes that are overburdened. But oh well. So we're at 8:30ish. I kind of want to talk about education aspect. We hear a lot. Like I said, I'm nothing. I'm just a rank and file member. I'm out of Naples, Florida. Been in for 3 years. In the past year and a half now, we've been hearing a lot of terminology about conferences and conventions and meetings. So we just talked about the convention where the delegates go up and vote on resolutions and amendments to actually help steer the ship. And the other meeting I hear is COP, Committee of Presidents. So, Paul, I would like you to educate us on what the hell COP is, because for me, it's like it's a cop, and it's like, wait, I don't talk to cops.
Okay,
so wait, hold on. My question is, what is it? Does it include all the presidents? And 2, what does it accomplish?
Okay, so originally, what a COP was a Committee of Presidents, where the branch presidents could all get together and pretty much talk about what we're talking about. The national is doing this wrong and that wrong, and this is what we want to see. So together, we almost had our own little kind of a mini union to bring forward to the national and say, this is what we want to see happen. But over the years, it's kind of gotten distorted, where we actually invite national to participate so much now that it's just a miniature version of our national convention. I mean, at our last Committee of Presidents meeting, or maybe the one before that, I was talking, and Renfro said, you will be quiet. I'm speaking. You will be polite. You will listen to me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is my fucking house. This is our meeting. You're the guest, and you're telling me to shut up. You know, but this is what we've gotten down to, where the COP isn't really a committee of presidents anymore. It's kind of a rap session with our national counterparts. And I mean, they should be at the back of the room. They should be answering questions if we have any. But I mean, they're guests. They're strictly guests, and this is for us to talk about them. You know, and we've actually had a rap session, a COP, where we were told certain stuff was off limits. I don't want you talking about X, Y, and Z about our national officers. Well, fuck that. That's what we're here for. If we have to go in the parking lot and do it, that's what we'll do. That's what we're here for. You know, it's a bastardized version of what it used to be. It used to be a chance for us to get together and kind of build momentum for what we wanted to see happen. Just like almost like a social media group, really, but we just did it in person.
And Paul, you're right about that, because sometimes it feels like, as a branch president, the way I look at it is, I work for my members. I tell them all the time, you're my bosses. My branch members are my boss. They all work for us all the way up the ladder. We elect them. We are the bosses. So
100%.
Them telling us how to handle these situations, or what we can, what we can't do. We have rules, we have a constitution, we have that stuff. But we're the power. And it feels sometimes like the power is backwards. You know, you're just a member, you stay down there. But we're the power that gives them the ability.
I got a funny comment about that. I was at a it was a state convention, and I was mentioning something to, I'm not even telling the hierarchy of what it was mentioned, but I mentioned something to somebody who was a lot higher than me, and I said something I was going to do, and he says, "Well, Paul, you got to show some respect." And I said, "Well, hold on, who works for who?"
Whoa.
Right? I mean, our national officers work for us. There's no royal blood in Washington, D.C. These guys should be eager to answer our phone calls. And that's why I think they don't want to hear from us at the tentative agreement. They don't want to hear people saying, well, this is what I want, and this is what Chris wants, and this is what James wants. They just want to think that they have the best knowledge, and they're telling us what to do. And I mean, it's wrong.
With the COPs, if it's by the presidents for the presidents, is it even a sanctioned union event? And what actually happens like inside? Like, is it just like a meeting one day?
So they have an agenda. They have an agenda. Like one of the items I remember, Kenny Lurch from I forget where he's from Pennsylvania. I think I'm probably gonna get it wrong, and I should know better. But he brought up a back pay issue. The carriers weren't getting their back pay from grievance settlements, and that was on the agenda, and we talked about it. And I mean, a bunch of us had ideas, and Renfro was there, and he pretty much shot down all the ideas and said, trust us, we're doing a great job, we got it covered." But that's the kind of things we do. We'll talk about back pay memorandum. Why aren't we doing this for our union? Why even the Article 8 stuff? Why are we having places around the country that are working 16 hours? Maryland. Thank you, Richie Ray. Kenny Lurch is from Maryland. Rockville, is it Rockville, Maryland? It's Rockville, isn't it? I should know that. Yeah, he's a rock star.
So going forward, members that have recently become branch presidents that are in like Kentucky or like middle of East Bumfuck that actually doesn't have like a big city, do you recommend that they spend branch resources to go to a committee of presidents or like a rap session? Do you recommend that these sessions and meetings are actually worthwhile for union dues?
So I actually do value the committee of presidents meetings. I think that we need to get back to our roots, and if we did that, I think it would have much more importance in what we're doing. I think we really need the opportunity to network. I talk to John talks to Chris, and we're like, hey, I've got the same problem, and if we can network like that and say, okay, well, for instance, one of the big things on the team right now is a lot of our arbitrations are because they won't accept cease and desist language. We're fighting all day long on whether cease and desist is even a remedy. And if this is going on all over the country, why the fuck aren't we putting something in our contract saying this is an option for an arbitrator to decide a grievance? Cease and desist is an option. And just let it go from there. And we'll save all this money on all these arbitrations that we're just trying to get the same answer out of these people.
So in regards to what John was saying about sending people, I did want to ask you with smaller branches, how do you think the NALC is doing in regards to education in general and making it accessible to smaller branches?
Okay. So I was just trying to look this up while we were talking before, and one of you asked me a question. I'm like, shit, I gotta pay attention. But the Kim region, Kentucky, is it Kentucky in Michigan?
Michigan, Indiana, is it?
Yeah. I don't know what region number they are, but they do a steward college training. And what they'll do is they'll go to your branch, James. They'll go to your branch, and they will sit there and teach for a week. And they'll come back in a couple of months to do an intermediate class, and in a couple of months to do an advanced class. And if you think about it, I mean, Formal A and beyond is great, but we can't all afford in a small branch to send people across the country to this training. So if we have these steward colleges that come to these towns and do it for us, or, I mean, who is it? Someone just said make COP available Zoom. That's a great idea. We could do Zoom trainings for steward colleges and things like that. But the problem is there's no uniform system. I mean, the Kim region has a great program, and our region doesn't do that. And somebody else's region might do something even better or crazier that we haven't looked at yet.
And Paul, you're right in regards to Formal A and all these classes. Is the NALC National has millions and millions and millions. Why can't they send people out to the regions to teach them by the regions instead of us have to go to Washington, D.C., us have to go to California, where you're right. What's Formal A? Is it 5 weeks? That's hard for a branch and some branches to afford to send somebody. Maybe they want to send multiple people. They can't afford it. Whereas they could send somebody out to a region and say, hey, everybody in this region, if you want to go to this training, it's going to be in this state. It's much easier for me to go to New Hampshire or Rhode Island than it is for me to get to Washington, D.C. and take 5 weeks away from my family. I'm a single father. It's hard for me to take that time off. And
what's
sure as it is others.
Yeah, and who needs the help the most? The bigger branches that can afford to send people, the smaller branches that don't have education or the resources.
Yeah, and you're right about that. When I took over my smaller branch, I was kind of just given the reins, and it was no process. We had a guy that was great. He retired many years ago, and there was nobody that really knew what they were doing. And I kind of came into this with no training and having to work it out myself. And it would have been nice if there was. My region does do very well with some of the training events. They have made some training events available. But in regards to, you're right, Formula A, stuff like that, a lot of guys that have never been to it. And throughout my branch, we haven't had guys that have been through it. We should probably have somebody who would make it a lot easier. And with our smaller branches, we're stuck into a position where, at least I am, where I'm looking at, I'm 42, focusing on the guy who can take over from me. You know, trying to train these younger guys so that they have the training, because it wasn't affordable to me because we're a smaller branch. I didn't come into a branch where I had senior guys that have been here, that there was 18 reps that have been here that, hey, Capone, we'll teach you this. Here, show you this. Learn myself. And there needs to be something to help those branches out, because we're not just a nation of big branches. There's a lot of little branches throughout the region, and they're all carriers, all dues paying members. Josh is raising his hand. And Josh gives a good training class too. I want to throw that one out there.
So that's what I was going to say. I don't think I'm great at training, but when we did our first training, it was with Corey came down and helped us. So when we first took over, like 2 days after we got put in as president and executive vice president, we did a member training. We put it out there to everybody, and we got shit for it from everywhere. So so my business agent called me, said, do your thing. But I've gotten calls from 3 business agents so far saying, you know, why the fuck is your member training my members? Like, and we're the fucking National Association of Letter Carriers. We're not the regional association. We're not the local association. Like trainings should be available.
Well, we've gotten down training fellow members.
Like,
we should all
knowledge should be shareable. There should be videos
Absolutely.
you could be able to log in to see things, because now we live in an era. We're all on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
Like, I remember during the convention, Murphy was telling me, like, South Dakota has a few hundred carriers. None of them could come to the convention because their locals couldn't afford it. You know, certain states, you know, in the middle of nowhere cannot afford it. They're too small. Zoom is free. I mean, okay, it's $19.99 for a paid account. The NALC, I think, can afford $19.99 a month, and you could have it for anybody. You could do 5 weeks at home. There's so many people who are like, if they're making contracts and say you have to work 14 hours a day, there's no way they're going to be able to make it to a training an hour and a half in a city to go out and do it and drive an hour and a half back, sleep, shower, and like it's impossible. Zoom exists, and I agree. I know some people are saying that like in person is the best. I love in person, but some people that's not an option. We can do Zoom now, like it's 2025.
And the answer I've always heard is in regards to, well, we don't want the management to know what we're talking about. I will let them know this. I have seen plenty of reps out there. They are fucking sieves when it comes to management, and they tell everything to management. Management knows everything. This shit gets out there, and for us to say, well, we're not going to put training available to people because management finds this shit out. They do. They all chit chat. There's some rep somewhere in the country that's sitting at his desk, chit chatting with the boss, letting them in on way too much shit that they're passing on to their buddies. It's unfortunate, but it is what happens.
I'm assuming we're okay with ending at 9. Okay, Chris is saying 9:15. Let's end at 9:15. I don't know what Paul was thinking for an end.
I'd like a few minutes to throw a couple things out there that I've got ideas on. But
Yeah,
I know you discussed some cool topics which have been kind of hot in the social media world. I don't know if anyone's been following anything, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But
yeah, The interview is Paul, and my idea for next generation carriers is for the old folks that actually know stuff to educate the next generation of carriers on giving them tips and tricks, and also to get us ready to be alert on what we should be fighting coming forward. So, like, Paul, if you want to speak on what you think us next generation carriers should be aware of and moving forward, like, you have the floor. And then if you're done, you're done. Cool. I'll just let you speak.
Okay, so anything's fair game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sure.
Yeah,
These are your words. I'm just letting everyone know these are your words. So I'm just.
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of my friends are out here, and I do want to say a little bit about the CLC drama that's been going on, and I want to put a disclaimer out there. I've got the greatest respect for the CLC as a movement. I think their mission is a bold one. I think they're going to be making a big change in our national union, and we need the change, you know. And the people in the CLC, I mean, James Henry, a brilliant man. I don't think I've ever met a more brilliant advocate. You know, I mean, the guy makes me look like a chimp when it comes to arguing a case. He's a genius. And Corey Walton, well, we all know Corey Walton is the future of the NALC. You know, and Richie Ray, and I know Richie Ray is not one of the officers, but he's surely up and coming. And Dave Groskopf, Dave Groskopf, if you want a bulldog in the ring for letter carriers, that's the guy to have, you know. But I do want to fill in a little bit of missing details on what I thought's been going on in the conversation. And again, I do this with the greatest respect, because I do have the greatest respect for the CLC. But I was one of the founding members. I don't know if you guys know that. There was about 35 of us in the room, and are you looking around for a way out, Chris? You're looking for the exit? Oh, okay, all right. I got a couple of dogs too. I think you just went on mute.
He wanted to make an appearance. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. So, you know, I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Corey Walton was talking about, and I'm not sure if Mike said a little bit about this, but I think there's a missing part to the story that a lot of people haven't heard. And I know somebody's going to say that I'm rehashing old news and, you know, put it to bed, but I've got a personal stake in this, so I'm just going to say my piece. I haven't gone public and said this to anybody ever, but so I think we're pretty much caught up with where Corey brought us, that there was a vote from the CLC Executive Council. There were 6 people in the council who decided between James and Mike Cariff. And I think where Corey left us off was that Mike had pledged some level of support to the CLC, and Corey felt let down that didn't happen. Is that kind of paraphrasing where kind of sort of where we're at? But there's a part that came after that I really wanted to talk about. So there was and I, you know, I've heard people say they keep receipts. I keep receipts. I've got all of the emails here. I copied everything. My vice president said, "Did you really go back and copy all that shit?" I sure did, because I don't want to fuck up anything here. I don't want anybody to come back and say, "What are you talking about?" So there was a Zoom meeting which was held on was it May? My notes there. So on May 7th, there was the announcement that James Henry was the choice for the CLC. And there was a Zoom meeting on May 10th to further discuss that. And there was 102 of us in that Zoom meeting. And we were the ground floor members of the CLC at the time. And we discussed what Corey was talking about. You know, that Mike had made a level of commitment, and it was a conditional, and there was a misunderstanding, or there wasn't, whatever it was. But James was on that podcast, and Mike was on that podcast, and they both got a chance to speak. And we, the 102 members on that podcast, made 2 decisions. First of all, we decided that, you know, Mike and James were both great candidates, but we didn't know enough about them. You know, we thought that we needed their platforms, and we needed to learn more about both of them. And the second decision we made was that we should get together. We wanted them to provide written platforms to the CLC Executive Board by May 31st. And we would get together a week later on June 7th we would review the platforms, and we would vote. So to me, that's a really important part that's being left out, because at that point, 102 people were given the authority to vote. So we were now the ruling body on who was going to be elected as our president for our slate for the CLC. So what happened after that was kind of a little bit confusing. I guess James Henry, and I've got his slate here too, so I do keep receipts. James Henry's slate, he had 76 endorsements on his slate, which meant that he went to 76 people and said, "Hey, Chris, I'm running for president. Would you support me?" And Chris says, "Yes, I would." Okay, I'm going to write down Chris's name. So this happened 76 times. And I guess when Mike Cariff reviewed that, he said, "Okay, well, James Henry has gone public with his run for president, so I'm going to do the same thing." So he went on his website and he said, "I'm running for president too." So now keep in mind, this is all between May 31st and our June 7th Zoom meeting to actually vote as a body on what we're deciding. So we get this correspondence on June 6th from Ricardo Guzman, who's the chairperson of the CLC. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to fuck it up. To all, for those of you who pay attention or participate in social media, you know Mike Cariff has decided to branch off CLC. Mike, by his own actions, has shown he is no longer a member of CLC, so we do not have to vote between Mike Cariff and James Henry. This is an official announcement that James Henry is the NALC presidential candidate. So this announcement was made the day before that we were supposed to have our vote. The meeting never happened. The vote never happened. And there was a lot of people that were pretty frustrated by that, because if we had had the meeting and people had said, "Okay, well, Mike did something by announcing his presidency that disqualifies him, why can't we talk about it?" And I'm going to throw you under the bus, John. Are you ready for this? Let's say John Murphy and I are running for branch president of Branch 44. All right, John, you're going for promotion. Okay, you're running for president of my branch. Against me, okay?
Midnight Murphy versus Paul. All right.
Yeah, Midnight Murphy versus Paul. So we're running for president of my branch, and the election is next Thursday. We're going to have a union meeting next Thursday, so everyone can vote. There's 102 people in our branch, by the way. So we're going to have 102 people vote next Thursday between John and myself. And, Chris and James, you guys are the members, so you get ready for this, okay? You're on the hot seat here. You're going to get an email saying that John Murphy announced his presidency, so he is being disqualified from consideration. Paul Boulanger has won the election, and the branch meeting has been canceled. So, Chris, how would you feel if you had that vote lined up on Thursday, you were ready to go vote, and someone told you John did something wrong, and there's no discussion, but Paul is now the president?
Seems slightly undemocratic. That's all. That's maybe me just right now saying that. That doesn't sound great. But a question I have, because one thing that was brought up was that, other people are saying, I'm using my words carefully. I've learned my lesson. People are saying that there was a vote before. There was somehow. Remember, they said there was a vote. That was before this, right?
So after the initial CLC meeting that we had, where the 35 of us got together, we elected 6 members of the executive council: the chairperson, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and 2 trustees. And we didn't know what their roles would be, but we got an email or a couple of months later that Mike and James had both been vying for the position, and James had been chosen by those 6 members. So, personally, myself, if I think of a treasurer, that's somebody who counts money. And a secretary, that's someone who takes notes and records the meeting. So I never personally invested these people with the authority to vote for me. I felt uncomfortable about that, which is why I was happy we were having that Zoom meeting. And when I started talking about it, I was kind of shocked that there was a lot of people that were also kind of, Josh Grohl was there, and he was a little puzzled, and there's a couple of other people, Tom Edelkar, Josh would know some of the names. There's a lot of people that came forward and said, "You know what? I felt uncomfortable about not having the opportunity to vote." And I think someone just said I have my facts wrong. If anybody wants these emails, I'd be more than happy to send them to you. I'll put them to you if you want. I've got James Henry slate, I've got Mike Cariff slate, or platform, whatever you need from me. I keep receipts, but I'm not bashing the CLC for this. You know, I don't bash the members. I have the greatest respect for all of them, but I'm just hurt by the process. You know, and like you're saying, Chris, you know, I felt that there was a democracy in place. 102 people had a vote, and those 102 people lost their chance to vote. And granted, if Mike did something that was unforgivable that disqualified him from running, that's fine. Let's talk about it as the 102 people Democratic Party that was established and say, all right, Mike, you're out. We're sorry. Or maybe 102 people might say, you know what, it wasn't that bad. Let's go forward. But to silence 102 people without the opportunity to talk, I just felt robbed, you know, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Unless someone tells me I'm wrong and they want proof, and I'd be happy to put this up online somewhere. I don't care, and I'm happy to go on any podcast. I have no ill feelings towards anybody, but I just had to get that out myself because, you know, I feel that no one has told an incorrect version of the story, but no one's told the whole story, and that's where I left off. You know, I left my affiliation with the CLC because of that. I think. I had talked to Josh earlier today, and I said, Josh, is that why you left? And he said, you know, I'm an open book. You feel free to tell people that's why I left too. And there's a lot of people that felt that their voice was kind of muffled that day. And, you know, it's a hard pill to swallow, brother. I mean, you know, if you're counting on that meeting and you're all energized by a vote, I mean, I would have been just as happy to support James or Mike if 102 of us agreed. Yeah. But 102 of us didn't agree. 6 of us agreed.
I have a question though. As literally, like I said, 3 years in, this to me personally, it just looks like an old guard versus the old guard. And as a labor organizer or anything in the labor movement, you say, the quote is, you can replace the old boss with the new boss, but it's still a boss. So my question is, if with you, Paul, how do you feel that there was only 100 was it presidents? Or just people?
No, it was just people. So the original CLC meeting had about 35 people in the room. And then once we started, we actually made the decision and we were going to start spreading the news after we left the room. So we started inviting people. And by the time we got to that Zoom meeting, a couple of months later, we had 102, I want to say. That's the only fact I'm not certain of. It could have been 99. It could have been 106. But it was about 102 people that were in that Zoom meeting. And that's who we decided would make the decision.
And you're okay with that small group of people?
Well, I mean, that's what we had at the time, but that's what we and you know, I mean, I think it might have been Corey that said, you know, if you're going to bitch, that's the time to bitch. And we had 102 people that unanimously agreed that that's how we were going to do things.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's how a faction. I mean, like I said, you're starting a faction within an organization. So, I mean, it's not, like I said, the 6 is low, you know, and what, 35, but I think 112, I guess, is the number Richie's saying, but yeah, I think that's fine. So thank you for giving your, like I said, this is just, you were there. I take stock of what you said.
My opinion, you know,
right,
and
that's it. So
I'm fully expecting the hate mail to come pouring through. I'm you know,
so how do you spell that last name if you want to get that on?
Our money, you know?
Send that certified. Who knows when it'll get there though, but that'd be great. Right, so, all right. So awesome. And we did have one question just to lighten it up. Okay. And you saw on the camera that I also have a lab, and labs are wonderful. So question from Mike here. He wanted to know, how do you train your dogs? They were excellent in his videos. No, in his video. So why are your dogs so well behaved, and why are they so great?
So this is kind of a good story. My dogs actually recover deer for hunters in the hunting season who can't find their game. So if you shot a deer and it takes off in the dark, and you know you're old and you have bad eyesight, you're colorblind, or the deer's smarter than you, my dogs are trained to track them. So pretty much from September through December, I'm running through the woods with my dogs after work, chasing deer for people. And they're just working dogs. They love it. They absolutely love it. So when I actually had my dogs sitting there, you know, my dogs wait for a command to actually bark and go. And I gave them that command and they started barking. So that was kind of it. Yeah.
Well, and are they both American labs, or like what kind of labs are they?
So they're mixed parents with American and English labs. My male is English. Yeah, my male is an English lab, and my female's an American lab. And she's actually the better tracker. So.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I got half English, half American lab. So, and he's just 100% like the laziest lab I've ever seen in my life. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. Labs are wonderful. So, all right, we're gonna end it on a high note. Labs are wonderful, and every other
Agreed.
dog too. All right.
So keep it on a light note, actually, Paul. Have you ever been to the Rex over in Manchester? The
I have
Rex
not. I have
Theater?
not. I have
Okay.
not.
So my buddy Warren O'Reilly runs it. Go in there, check it out. They have a music venue in there too. I told him I'd give him a cheap plug over there. Just say his name at the door. Tell him I sent you. He'll get you in.
What's his name again?
Warren O'Reilly.
Warren O'Reilly. Okay.
He runs the Rex, and there's two other theaters. I forget which the two theaters that are connected to it. One's a music venue, one's a theater.
If this gets voted down, will you help mobilize your membership and do a contract rally?
Oh shit, yeah. Try to hold me back.
Thanks to Richie Ray and Josh for getting involved as well. Thank you guys, and thank you, Paul, for coming on this.
Thank you guys for having me anytime.
All right, awesome.